0718 UTC. After trashing the door to engineering, Steph led the way back to the hangar bay we entered in, while I roughed out the basic math. Anywhere from 7 to 10 minutes, best to underestimate. We didn't exactly run, but we weren't expecting guards to be worried about us after a mechanized voice had come over the loudspeaker, warning them that the ship was about to explode. We knew, cerebrally, that we only had so much time. However, it's hard to rush when you're surrounded by green light. What, I wouldn't give her some good old-fashioned emergency red, I said. We made it back to the hangar without fuss. When we got there, though, the escape pod that we'd arrived in was gone, as were 4 of the fighters. As we watched, the hatch closed on one of the 2 remaining craft, and it jetted out of the hangar. And the horse you rode in on. What? Steph gave me a puzzled look for my non sequitur. Last level of Halo. Overload the reactor, get to the hangar bay, fly out in the last remaining fighter. We gotta play that once we get back. I don't think I'll want to fight aliens for a few years at this point. Yeah, it doesn't really hold a candle to the real thing anyway. We reached the fighter and hit the plate to open it up. It flashed green. Oh, damn it, I cried, and punched the panel. The hatch opened. That's what I thought, I crowed, and climbed in, Steph right behind. The escape pod had looked like a long tapered cylinder. The fighter craft, by comparison, was a giant flying wing like an F-117 stealth fighter, but a bit wider and smoother in appearance. Like the escape pod, the fighter craft had 6 pedals. Steph stayed at the back and operated the rear pedals with her feet. Because of my good hand, I took the forward 4 pedals, lying on my belly to get the front ones with my hands and the rear pedals at my feet. Yes, can we just skip this? Yes, that's exactly what it looks like. Very mature. Can we just move on? The rear and middle pedals were simple opposed up and down motions. When one pedal was depressed, the opposite one would raise up, connected by some sort of solid rod in between. The front pedals were actually, now that I had a good grip on them, more like handlebars. They had a full range of motion, up and down, forward and back, and a mechanism holding the bar allowed both sides to move in the same direction at once instead of just levering against each other. Steering controls wouldn't help, though, until we could get the craft turned on. I searched for switches, buttons, a key to turn anything. I started hitting controls at random. Try shaking it, Steph suggested. I craned my neck to look back at her. She shrugged. Worked the rest of the times. Shaking my head, I grabbed the front handlebars and pumped them up and down. I heard a thrumming noise below and behind us that died after a moment. I tried it again. It started, lasted longer, and died down again. This is ridiculous, I said, pumping it a 3rd time. This time, it caught and turned over. We got 3 minutes to figure this out, I said. We'll start with my pedals, then work our way back. I pushed down my right hand. I felt the fighter kick its left wing up off the floor of the hangar. I tried the other way, and the opposite happened. Banking, check. I lowered the entire bar slowly, and we felt the rear of the ship come up. Raised both, and the nose lifted. Pitch, check. I then pushed the pedals forward. Both at once did nothing, but one, then the other, caused the ship to turn to face a similar direction. Side to side, check. Side to side, do I look like a pilot? Doing the research now, the terms are roll, pitch, and yaw, but I mean, 1 out of 3 ain't bad, right? Middle pedals now. I pushed the right pedal down. The entire craft shuddered but didn't go anywhere. Pushing the left pedal, we felt the ship raising off the ground. We have liftoff. That would have been handy while testing the rest. My turn, Steph asked. I nodded and kept us suspended in the air. Right pedal. We started to edge forward. Left pedal. We slowed down, then started moving backward. Good enough, I said, looking at my watch. Time to go. We blasted out of the hangar and set sights for Earth in front of us. Behind us, there was a flash of light. Cut the power, I said, and then pushed my left handlebar forward. We spun in place and saw the ship breaking apart, then finally exploding in a huge flash of light. I thought you said we had like 2 minutes left. So I'm bad at estimating how fast an alien second is. We're alive, aren't we? Yeah. Let's go home. 0830 UTC. There's a whole science behind re-entry into atmosphere. When a shuttle comes back to Earth, it starts out upside down, then flips over and turns side to side, needs to have a specific pitch angle coming in or it'd burn up. And that's to say nothing of the entry descent landing video I saw of the Mars Curiosity rover earlier in the year. It almost made me want to not even attempt it. Turns out alien craft have it a lot easier. I couldn't read the relative airspeed numbers or the angle of attack with a different scale once the craft had detected a gravitational field to orient on, but I figured the slower we were going, the better. They used the upward thrust to keep us from dropping too fast, while Steph metered our speed to go relatively slowly. Someone more experienced probably could have made the entry in a couple of minutes, but for us it was 15 tense minutes of constant adjustments. Figuring out where exactly to land was also tough. Any place in Washington, D.C. would seem like an attack, and fucked if we could figure out where the Kennedy Space Center was. Eventually we figured we'd just bring it to the local airfield near our apartment. We started to hear a voice fill the cockpit, a human voice, speaking English. Unidentified incoming craft, please maintain your course and do not deviate. Disobeying these orders will be construed as a hostile act. The message was repeated in Spanish and French, then back to English. I scrambled to find a way to reply. The display in front of me was probably a touchscreen, but I was hoping not to have to use it. Steph, a little help? Shake it? I looked at her again and sarcastically tried to shake the stationary display. When I turned around, though, I fully expected it to have somehow magically solved our problem. It hadn't. Okay, communications. Oh, Skype! I found the familiar sigil that I'd hit on my tablet a few hours ago and hit that. A list of icons came up with various other symbols next to them, probably if they were out of range, or one was broadcast all, or... Well, I was lost, but there was a display that, if you stretched your imagination, looked like the waveform display of the incoming transmission. I tapped that and it lit up. I said, "This is Andrew Hookway, civilian aboard enemy fighter. Please respond. Repeat, Andrew Hookway in control of alien starfighter requesting landing clearance and directions." Mr. Hookway? How the hell... never mind. Which fighter are you in? I'm currently on course towards upstate New York. Alright, we see you. Hold tight, we're going to bring you into Kennedy Space Center. Change course for there and we'll have a fighter escort meet you along the way. Best I can figure for that is Florida somewhere. I haven't got a map in here, not one I can use anyway. Good enough. The looping message changed to one telling the alien fighters to follow me. We were going pretty slow to be cautious of burning up in the atmosphere, but other Kryntavan had no such compunctions, better knowing the limits of their craft. Steph kept us at the same speed to appear as passive as possible, and eventually an F-22 rose up off our nose to lead us in. A single F-22 leading a flight of 3 alien fighters. Ballsy. Kudos to the U.S. Air Force. A second one joined us as we neared Florida, but I later found out that a lot of fighters were damaged or outright destroyed fighting off the waves of alien fighters that had launched following the destruction of the scout transport 5 hours ago. The enormous vehicle assembly building was the first thing we were able to pick out among the thinning clouds. It stood among a complex of runways and roads and buildings, as the entirety of Launch Complex 39 was lit up like a beacon, both to guide us down from the night sky and presumably to call attention away from the nearby Air Force Base. We were directed to a huge landing strip just before the VAB, probably where the space shuttles used to land. Poor space shuttle. Fighting some wind, we used the vertical thrust to gently-ish land the craft on the asphalt runway we were directed to. The other 2 craft showed us up, of course, landing in formation behind us. What followed was debriefing, and a slightly less colorful version of everything I've told you now. Honestly, that took up the rest of the day of the 21st, starting right when we ended up landing at 9:30 UTC, or 4:30 Eastern. We were pretty beat. Past bedtime, running on adrenaline, all that. I called Mom back to let her know I was alright. What a good son I am. No need or clearance to tell her the details, or that I was calling from Florida. Our wounds were looked after, we got some sleep, they took away the weapons and the tablet. My tablet. And eventually we were flown back home late in the day, not arriving until it was technically Saturday already. Man, something about going from almost halfway to the moon back to Earth in an hour really makes you mad at the aviation industry for making a measly 1,000 miles take so long. December 22nd, 2012, 1300 Eastern, 1800 UTC. I don't know if this entry is allowed to go public yet. I'm writing it now to get it all down. The government is trying to decide between a cover-up involving, well, every nation of Earth that got involved, and that's a lot, and just going public with it. I guess they're going with the latter. More Kryntavan ended up surrendering. They're fairly positive that more will show up to check up on their advanced scout. Letting people know about them could drive up recruiting in case we need to fight more Kryntavan off, and help to unite nations of Earth now that we know we're not alone. Opinion of the men in black were split as to whether we did the right thing blowing up the mothership, or if we should have let them go. Ultimately it was decided that because they were having such problems Earthside, a decisive win in space was needed to show that we could beat them if we needed to, even if it ended up being a couple of civilians that did it and not any military force of the world. Still, we know they're out there. we're ready. For my part, I've got some Halo to play. So this was a really enjoyable project. I'm trying to avoid saying fun because I said that all the time in my last video, but it was. This took me 2 weeks to write. I kind of got the idea right after December started to be like, oh, what if I write a story about me saving the world from the Mayan apocalypse, the Mayan end of the world. And I thought, what would be interesting to do? And of course, it became turning away an alien invasion. You can definitely see where the inspiration comes from with this. A lot of Halo and a lot of Prey, but you can also see a few other things as well. I enjoyed the things that I made up on my own, like the Krentavan themselves and their technology, the six-legged mammal kind of thing, the trapezoids and hexagons everywhere, trying to figure out how hexapedal beings would even use weapons, and kind of making those stumbling blocks for the characters, me and Steph, to get over. This was a project that I did, a little bit of research on, and of course, when you're doing science fiction, especially if you have numbers, you try to do math with the countdown, and you try to say, okay, what's the layout of the Kennedy Space Center, and the vehicle assembly building and everything like that. And then there's also research that in this case you don't expect. This was going to take place on a specific day, but it was being released on that day. So I had to know ahead of time what the weather was going to be like at the Kennedy Space Center, and I found out it was going to be windy. If it was rainy, that would have changed the story. If it was going to be a bright sunny day, then I would have seen the sunrise coming over or something like that. Originally, it was going to be longer as well. We were going to have to, find a place to sleep, similar to a piece of fiction that I read online called, what's it called? Free Radical, which is a lot of fun, and that takes a while, takes place over a couple days, but it didn't really work with the flow of the story. So the other last interesting thing that I'll say about the story is that it's a neat kind of time capsule. It of course brings to mind the December 21st, 2012 Mayan end of the world thing that everyone talked about during the year and everyone knew was fake. I didn't end up having my end of the world party, but whatever. And it also brings to mind some big things for me, or things that I noticed. The Mars Curiosity rover is mentioned towards the end, and that was a lot of fun to, staying up all night and watching that land. And that's, space exploration that, with a science fiction story, I felt that really fit. The other thing was the weather balloon photos that a lot of people did, you started seeing all those stories of people sending up a weather balloon with an iPhone, or Mass Effect 3 did that for release, putting up a camera and a copy of the game, 10 copies of the game up into space, come back down for people to find and have. So, it's a neat little time capsule of 2012 as well. So, I really enjoyed writing the story, and I enjoyed telling the story as well. If there's any particular chapters that you really enjoyed, let me know. If you liked this, cool. If you didn't like this at all, sorry, maybe next week's video will be more suited to your liking. So, and as always, share it with your friends, subscribe, like, whatever you want to do. Remember to follow me on Facebook, and I will see all of you next week.